could ask the three speakers to come to the dais here. Folks, you'll notice there's a microphone up front here and a microphone about the center of the room right over to my left, your right. If you have a question for Dr. Jehle, who is making his way up, Dr. Vieira, who maybe ran from the room screaming, I don't know, or Ambassador Dr. Keys, who I'm going to invite to come up, come to the microphones. I will do my best to moderate. And gentlemen, what we'll do here so everyone can hear you, and it more importantly can be picked up by the broadcast, is I will, whichever one of you wishes to speak, take the wireless microphone and just pass it around. So now's the time to ask your questions, folks. Microphone there, microphone here, and with that, I'll step aside.
And folks, when you do go to the microphones, please do not take them out of the stand. They're all set up, so just speak right to them, and you don't need to yell. Thank you.
Go ahead, Pam.
Dr. Keys, I have a question for you. I know here in New Hampshire there was a movement to get the sacrament of marriage out of government, because government should have never taken one of the 7 sacraments of the church. And that would alleviate a lot of the problems that we have today. What is your opinion of this?
Well, first, I think that we misconstrue what's involved in the whole licensing procedure. And in fact, I have some personal experience now that our government doesn't pretend that I needed permission from the government to marry. My wife was from India. We got married in a ceremony that was performed under the laws and authority of the Catholic Church in Bombay, India. Calcutta, rather, India. And it was valid. And I had no need to go through any other ceremony. All I did when I got back to the United States was to pursue the necessary procedures to make sure that the United States government took cognizance of the fact that we were married. And why does the government have to do that? See, sometimes people forget an implication of the statement in the Declaration. To secure these rights. Can you secure a right you don't see for a person or institution that you don't recognize? No. The government has to recognize a marriage in order to make sure that the unalienable rights that are involved in the marriage and the family it produces will be respected by all entities that are part of the government, because that's part of the duties of a just government, to secure unalienable rights. So the notion that you could somehow get the government out of the business of acknowledging marriages and etc., that's false. Couldn't happen, because the government then wouldn't be able to do one of its most important functions. And the final point is, the other reason I think you couldn't get them out of the business is because when the government has to secure rights, wouldn't we have to make sure that they had established a criterion for marriage that was inclusive of marriages, especially when we have different denominations, different understandings of religious backgrounds, how marriage is, and so forth and so on. There would have to be a set of simple rules applied to everybody that said, whatever religious right or background, we're going to recognize that what has happened is a marriage, and all you have to do is let us know that it happened according to these criteria, which if you satisfy them, will then satisfy us that that's a marriage. Because we don't really have the authority to marry you. See? And then you finally get to the point of the atheists, who are the ones who are the people who don't have religious background and so forth. They want the government to marry them, and they're all content that the certificate issued by the government should be their marriage document. That's not because it gives them permission to marry. It's because they want to marry, and it certifies that their marriage will have the same validity as marriage performed under various and assorted religious rites. Can you imagine a way to get out of that? Because I can't see it. That's part of equity. That's part of the need to treat everybody and give them an equal opportunity if they otherwise qualify to marry. And so I would say no. People are saying that, a lot of people, but I think it's because they don't understand the nature of an alienable right. It's that confusion with freedom. See, if you think of right as simply a freedom, then you say, well, you know, government doesn't have any business getting involved with people's freedom to marry. But it does have a business to secure the right that is involved, to respect the authority that derives from that right over children, and to have a systematic way of doing so that will be equitable for all of us.
Thank you.
Sir.
Yes, I have a question for Dr. Vieira. Can a New Hampshire legislator limit the authority of a delegate at a constitutional convention as called for under Article 5 of the federal Constitution?
Well, first you'd have to tell me what the call is going to be that Congress gives. If you read Article 5, Congress has the power to call a convention when certain events happen. And if you tie that in with Article 1, Section Clause 18, the so-called necessary and proper clause, Congress has the power to execute what is necessary and proper to put into execution all the other powers in the Constitution. So when Congress gets that call, it is going to define some procedure and some qualifications for the delegates coming from the various states. I seriously doubt that if that's done, and I would assume Congress would do that because they're going to exercise their powers to the very limits, that any state would be in a position to override that.
So you're saying that a state legislator can tell a delegate what he can propose for amendments?
No, I think that Congress is going to say what is going to be proposed for amendments. Now, it might open up...
No, Article 5 says that the delegates will come to the convention to propose amendments. Congress is only going to hold the convention.
Congress is going to call the convention. And my understanding of the word call is they're going to set the parameters for that convention. And they could very well say, we're going to have these amendments because the states have asked for them, and then we're going to open it up to other amendments. But what if that call specifies the only amendment that will be considered, the only amendments that will be considered will be A, B, and C? The states have no authority to override Congress's power to call the convention. It's exclusive.
I think you're missing my question here. Congress calls the convention. They don't say anything about what the states are going to propose at this convention.
They don't?
No.
Why, I don't understand why not. When you call the convention, you set the parameters.
Who sets the parameters?
Congress.
No. Congress only calls the convention, tells you where it's going to be held, and maybe how many delegates go there. But they can't control the delegates when they come down there to discuss how many amendments they might want to choose.
Well, you wait and see what they do.
Yeah.
All right, I look at that word call, and it tells me that they can set the parameters of that convention, including the business that's going to go on at that convention.
Not a chance.
See, if I can make one comment, because I think there's confusion, but I always go back to the original situation. Because the first constitutional convention was called by the states. And the people who went to it were chosen by the states. And they also, by the way, had a call to do something that did propose what they were supposed to do. And it was for the purpose of what?
Purpose of amending the Articles of Confederation.
Right, hold it. And that was it. There was a big discussion amongst the people who were attending the Constitutional Convention. Big, but not big in importance. So not altogether big in size or anything, because they all seemed to, a lot of them, to agree on this one point. The logic was this, and I don't say I agree with it or disagree with it, but I think it's the only thing likely to be remembered at a present called convention by the people who attend that convention. They will remember when the founders talked themselves into the notion that they did not have to restrict themselves to amending the Articles of Confederation, but could in fact propose an entirely new constitution. Why? The call was restricted. How could they go beyond the call? Because ultimately anything that is done is going to have to be put before the sovereign. And so the states are not, in that case, the sovereign that's going to decide. And since we're going to have to put it before the sovereign that will decide, we owe that sovereign our best judgment of what is necessary, and we're going to take it. And I'm not saying I agree. I think that was pretty kind of shrewd reasoning, and I'm not sure entirely logical, but they made that argument. And I would contend, and this is talking about human nature, not the terms of the convention or what the Constitution says. I think it's simple human nature. Because the reason so many different forces are pushing for the Article 5 convention is very suspicious to me. Do you find anybody on the scene in this country that reminds you of the logic and wisdom of the founders? I mean, I every now and again find somebody I hear like Dr. Vieira, and I say to myself, "Oh, is that wonderful?" But I think it's wonderful because it's like finding a bucket of water in a desert. See? The people who actually go to the convention are going to be the very people we have all around us now. And there's going to be a healthy proportion of them who hate the Constitution and who will be sent to that convention by people who hate it and mean to destroy it. And they will look for every avenue to do so. And the same people cooperating with them to destroy the country in Congress will make sure that there are people cooperating with them to destroy the country at that convention. And that's my fear.
You also have to differentiate between the call, whatever that may be and what it may entail, and how the delegates are going to respond to that call when they get to the convention, or how a state legislature may respond to that call. And all I can say is there is no limitation about what Congress can think that it can put into that call. And if the state delegates respond to that in one way or another, down the line, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to get into litigation. There's going to be some challenge to this. This is a rat's nest because we don't know, we really have no precedent other than the original example. And as was just pointed out, that didn't work out as it was originally proposed. So if you tell me that Congress cannot in the call set up the procedures, cannot list the amendments that are going to be considered, cannot determine who the delegates or how they will be selected, all I tell you is wait and see. Look at the Congress you have now and tell me that they will not exercise their necessary and proper power, which they think they have in extremis, in the extreme form, in whatever way they want to do it to promote what they want to come out of that convention.
That's right.
Because that's exactly what's going to happen. We do not have in Congress Madison, Jefferson, George Mason, even Alexander Hamilton. Right? We have Harry Reid, and we go down that list.
Thank you. Maybe we have time for two more. Right here, sir.
And this is for any one of you to answer. If we had that situation where there were no John Adams, no James, no Madison, nobody that came forth out of our current Congress, and we did have a runaway convention, could we not assemble 1/4 or 1/3 of the states to stop that runaway? The sovereigns, 1/3 or 1/4 of the sovereigns would not emerge to stop that?
You want to take the chance?
Yes, because look what we have now.
No,
we have
no.
a total runaway train.
No, I mean,
I'm willing to take a chance to stop it.
You want to take the chance of putting forth a convention that will give us Rexford Tugwell's new state constitution and hope that 1/3 of the states will vote against that?
Yes, because I get to stop it.
Meaning no offense, it reminds me, because I hear a lot of folks who speak very greatly about what they're going to do to stop this terrible business. And you're just saying that right now. You're going to stop this from happening. And yeah, we have mechanisms before us right now, including, for instance, the Iran Treaty. The Iran Treaty could have been stopped by 1/3 of the United States Senate. Didn't require 2/3. But not only did they not follow the procedure that would have allowed a blocking third to stop it, they actually invented a procedure that actually stood the provision on its head and required 2/3 in order to stop it. And you think that the political system that produced that result in the Congress is going to produce a different result not only in the convention, because, by the way, the reason we're suffering from the Congress we have is because the same political process that would be at work when ratification occurred would still be at work as it is now to subvert everything the people of this country want. So before I listen to people say, we'll stop it, I want them to get up, kick this corrupt, sick party system to the curb, and prove that we are still an independent people who would stand to defend our Constitution. Because I don't see evidence of it now. I see evidence of partisan toadies so enslaved by a party system that has betrayed our country now for almost 20 years. that they refuse to rise up against it, say no to every one of its candidates, and insist on starting something new. If I saw that spirit in this country, then I believe we were safe with a constitutional convention.
I agree with that, Dr. Keith. I agree with every word. But here's what I struggle with. The founders, they didn't give us this Congress. They gave us Article 5. It's a tool or a weapon. We don't dare use it. The founders gave us a tool and we don't dare use it. Meanwhile, we are collapsing from within like the Roman Empire.
Well, the founders gave us a constitution. It gave us impeachment. They gave us the right to take a criminal element in
The White House and put him up for indictment, finding out every one of his nastinesses. There's a majority in the Congress could do it. We elected that majority, but it's not doing it. See? We had an opportunity to turn the 2012 election and vote it no, didn't do it. All I'm saying is, don't promise to do something later that you're not willing to do now.
That's right.
Because before you'll get an uncorrupt, pro-constitution result out of a constitutional convention that will then be upheld by a pro-constitution majority of the people, you're going to have to get rid of the anti-constitution party system. The Republicans don't favor this Constitution. They don't support it. They don't care about it. The Democrats are out to destroy it, and the Republican leadership is helping them. You must destroy this party system before it destroys the country. And all your proposals will go to rack and ruin if you let this party system chew on them.
Now, I said we'd have a couple more. If the audience wants to continue to go on and the folks up here are willing to do it, I'll let it go for more time. So, continue?
Yes.
All right, gentleman here in the purple shirt. And just as an aside, if they're not following the rules now, what makes you think they'll follow the rules of the new Constitution unless it's what they want?
All right, I need to lay just a little bit of a foundation for this question. First, in order to understand it. In order to change the Constitution, there used to be the long, arduous process of constitutional amendments.
Yes.
Then they started putting in justices that had microscopic vision and could see things that no one had seen before. So we had legislation from the bench. But something of relatively recent origin has established a new precedence that troubles me. And in order to explain it, Sinclair Lewis and Alice Through the Looking Glass had Alice arguing with Humpty Dumpty about the definition of a word. Humpty had made ridiculous definitions for a word, and Alice said, the question is, can a word mean all these things?
Okay.
And Humpty said, the question is, who's in charge? And the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts began a new precedence when they declared that the definition of marriage was not sufficient, that it needed to be changed. And therefore, through redefining the word by their decree, by who was being in charge, made Massachusetts the first state to have legalized homosexual marriage. I can't say gay because I can't associate that with joy and happiness, but it's homosexual marriage. And so,
your question, sir.
So the question is that since the Constitution and laws can be changed now by redefining words, it seems to me that this is very unsafe, and I wondered if any of you have any comments on that.
I think one of the things we have to recognize is one of the reasons the founders even took the Constitutional Convention and that assembly back to the consensus of the people is because they knew that was a major safeguard. The Constitution was debated in taverns and churches across America for many months before it was actually ratified. And that's because the consensus of the people was of these universal rights. We do not have that today. The real work that I see that we must do before we're able to have safety, because we can look at all the things that are there, that Congress already has the ability to restrict the appellate jurisdiction of the court. We already have the checks and balances, but nobody's picking them up. There's no courage to do it. We're at the level of interposition of the people, even beneath the states. And so I think the most important thing we can continue to do is disseminate information. We are at a point right now, looks hopeless, but across this nation, And more groups like this, we're at a point where we're coming close to the tipping point. The tipping point means all of a sudden there's an explosion of groups that find out about each other, studying the Constitution, studying the original intent, laboring through pieces of aid. You don't have any idea how many people are studying that book. You know what I mean? And there's probably more than Ed realizes that are studying. More people that are studying. We think it may even look more hopeless than it is. I'm praying for a massive tipping point of a revival among the people of God. Not just a revival of spiritual revival, that's critical, but a revival of knowledge, because I think that's where the interposition is going to have to happen. And if it won't happen now to hold our people up, I agree, don't trust it with some other convention.
Just because he was there before you, gentlemen, in the tie back there at the second microphone. And then to you.
Thank you very much for tonight. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was asked numerous times about the difference between the Democratic Party and the Socialist Party. My question to you is, explain to me the difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party or the Socialist Party with the current crop of people we have in there now.
Who wants the microphone?
The Socialist Party is the honest one.
Gentleman here in front.
My question is to Mr. Edwin Vieira. It's how do we rein in, nullify, control the administrative law? It's how to neutralize administrative law.
How to neutralize administrative law. And that is the
One
final
way or
question of
another.
the evening.
It's a very complicated question because even if you're the President of the United States, you're going to be restrained by certain congressional statutes that have created these agencies. You may very well be willing to bite the bullet and say, well, these statutes aren't constitutional for this reason, that reason, or other, and that you face the problem that if Congress is not with you, you're going to have difficulties, perhaps even impeachment. All right?
But this addresses, if you would, the fourth, if you would, the impending fourth branch of government, which really doesn't exist, the bureaucratic state. And so since they derive their powers from legislative law, something has to be done to
Well,
it.
I think the practical answer to this is that the mainstay of this system is the Federal Reserve System. That's what enables this whole system to operate, because it's through the funny money process that they can fund it. All right? That's coming down. And then the question is, how do we respond to the circumstances that will obtain when it comes down? And it's coming down within my lifetime. I'm an old fellow, and I'm going to see it. I've been waiting on this since the 1970s, but it's coming in my lifetime, and I think in the lifetime of everyone sitting in here, unless you die tonight.
One last word on that subject, because sometimes we think that there is something going to happen now, and I think that's what you're trying to say. Stop waiting for something to happen that's going to deal with this. We have reached the point where the only people who can save us are the people themselves, you. And you can't do it. Wait. No person you choose, through the very corrupt system that is producing the problem, will ever remedy the problem. And when they say so, some of them are naive, and some of them are simply lying, but all of them are wrong. The only people who can save America are the Americans who get together, as happened in the American Revolution, through their committees of correspondence, which we can now technologize in very wonderful ways, if we're willing. But the first thing that's going to happen, you're going to have to decide that that way of doing things that is ruining our country is no longer your way of doing politics. And the last proposal, a lot of stuff that's being talked about, I talk about it, Dr. Vieira talks about it, it's all not in the Constitution, it's all extra-constitutional. But so is the way that you're doing business as a people. We are now doing business as a people, as citizens of the United States, in a way the Constitution not only did not envision, but that the founders, especially one of the most prominent, Washington, utterly condemned. He predicted it and said that it would lead to our destruction. But it's what we have now. We don't have two parties. We have two wings of the same faction, and it is destroying us. They work in their own interest, not in the interest of our Constitution, not in the interest of our country, not in the interest of our liberty or our people. They won't stop. We must stop them. And the way we stop them is by letting them go. Don't deal with them. Don't work with them. If the people who are part of what we call the Tea Party movement had followed my advice in that regard in 2010, we'd be electing a Tea Party president right now. But they didn't. They worked within the Republican Party, and that party has betrayed and gone to war with them. You must stop this madness, or our country is already destroyed.
Yeah.
Dr. Jehle makes his apologies, but he has to get himself and the students back. Dr. Vieira, Dr. Keys are still here.
Last one.
State Representative, well, Jack, did you want to ask a question too? Okay. Final question goes to State Representative Dan Itza of Fremont.
Wow.
Yes?
I would like to jump back almost to where we started, actually.
Who, by the way, has written a great book that called States Have Rights.
No, states have powers. People have rights.
I'm sorry, States Have Powers. Thank you. It's still a great book, even if I got the wrong title.
That said, going back to the question about delegate limitation, and it was not a question about limitation by the federal government, but limitation by the legislatures that actually send the delegates and would potentially have the power to recall delegates if they were errant. Inasmuch as delegates to a convention are ambassadors of the states and agents of the states, do you agree or disagree that the legislatures that send them have the power to limit what they discuss and recall them if they go off the reservation?
Oh, I agree that the legislatures have the power to do that. The question is whether that power will be effective. All right? Those delegates that went to the first Constitutional Convention were limited ultimately by Article 13 of the Articles of Confederation that said all the states had to agree to any change in the article. Notwithstanding Article 13, they came up with an entirely new constitution, an entirely new system of ratification. And what will happen if the same occurs here? Is someone going to go to this Supreme Court to say, oh, those delegates from these various states didn't follow their instructions, and therefore we're going to set aside Rexford Tugwell's new state constitution that is up for ratification by a referendum of the people of the United States? Is that what this Supreme Court's going to do? See, that's what interests me about a lot of these people who are in back of this Article 5 Convention of the States, or whatever they call it. They say one of the main reasons we have to do this is because the Supreme Court has gone beyond any rational interpretation of the Constitution. They're running amok, and we have to control them. And yet, in the final analysis, if their hopes break down and litigation ensues, what is the judicial body that's going to hear that case? It's the very people that say who are out of control. There's a certain circularity in their argument that leaves me cold.
The one other thing I'd say is two things that will be very different this time, that people aren't thinking through. The first Constitutional Convention took place in what was a pretty well-observed privacy. They weren't in the public eye. Do you really believe that in our present circumstances, things that people say, there were some pretty tough and straightforward things that were said and proposed at the first Constitutional Convention that probably would have cost the individuals who expressed them a fair amount of trouble. Never got out until later. You think that'll happen now? Because I don't. I think that is impossible. The government has super secret stuff slipping into the hands of our enemies, and you think a political convention full of people eager to share information embarrassing to their foes are going to be non-leaky sieve? I don't think so. So second thing, a Constitutional Convention is not an assemblage of objective experts who will be working in the better interests of America. We have an example before us in the founders of this country that was highly unusual in the whole history of humankind. That people would actually spend that much time, and most of them would not simply have made a catalog of their own interest and made sure they were served. Okay? That's what's going to happen at this one, because that's the way these people are now. That's how they've redefined our politics. That's how corrupt they have become. And they won't be able to resist it. And you won't be able to choose enough people to send to that convention who will resist it. Because in point of fact, you want the truth, I'll tell it to you bluntly. In our population at large, we don't have enough people to resist it yet all ourselves. So how do we expect to find people to do what we won't do ourselves? Last point. Some of it isn't about, I think, nastiness. It's about the usual political trade-offs. I'll give you your religious freedom amendment if you scuttle that Second Amendment I hate. None of us really care about that because we're all mostly lawyers, and the Ninth Amendment and the 10th Amendment are a pure embarrassment to intelligent people who discarded them long ago. Only kooks and cranks like those amendments. We can get them out of here, nobody will worry about it. Can't we all agree on that? Can't we remove that from the table? Finally, it won't be hanging about the necks and obstructing the progress of this country. And people who will represent Romney wing and Bush wing and Chris Christie wing and other rhino Republican wings of the convention, you think they're going to resist those proposals? Because I don't. Think it through in practical terms. They will horse trade away things that are absolutely vital to the fight we must make. And when they come out the other side, there will be no way for us to rally anymore, because all the amendments that give us the opportunity to do so, all the provisions that give us the direct opportunity to do so, will have been modified and removed. You betcha. I would bet my life on it. What I won't bet is the life of this country.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending today's Constitution Day event sponsored by the National Heritage Center for Constitutional Studies. I guess I'll wrap it up by saying this. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Stop waiting for someone else. I am your ever humble Master of Ceremonies. It's been my honor and a privilege. Thanks for being here.